very cool car, isn't it? Feels very solid, doesn't it? It's like, it's the annoying thing about my Volvo is, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, low 70s to buy, and it's got a beautiful interior, but it just rattles like a, you know what, it really just doesn't feel solid. And it's really frustrating when you spend all that money and you kind of expect it to be quiet and refined, and you know, you've not bought a Jeep Wrangler or a truck or something, you expect it to be kind of like Range Rover quiet and solid, and it just isn't, is it, Judy? It really annoys me. So this is the V8 gas engine,
and there's second gear.
and is this 5 litre?
5 litre.
Yeah.
Yes. Right, so it shifted from first to second at about 3 miles an hour.
Sweet.
If we'd actually made it to 6, we would have probably found that second to third shift. But instead, we're going to make this sweeping right up here. We'll try real hard not to cross 12 o'clock, which you said was going to be easy, so I'm counting on that. Some more right. Keep going right. Yes, please. And we'll go back over the same stretch of trail that I just drove, right?
Okay.
Because believe me, it's going to feel different when you're the one behind the wheel than just watching me go through it, right? And because this is a safe, easy environment, we're going to sort of put everything worst case scenario. We'll put the vehicle up on the highest tilt we can achieve here, so you really get that effect. So even though you are a driving god and you know better, there is an urge to steer left.
So yeah, it definitely feels kind of a little bit higher up here when you're in the driver's seat, that's for sure.
And then as we go through this undulating stretch here, you will feel the urge to steer into the resistance. It's just what the earth suggests to you via the steering wheel, right? You want to steer left right now, the trail doesn't go left. And then you'll want to go right now, and the trail doesn't go right.
Yeah.
You can really feel that feedback.
You can. The difference is, like, if this trail was totally dry, you wouldn't feel that, but because there's actually water and mud, you actually feel the wheel slide. When you're in the passenger seat, you don't feel that, but when you're in the driver's seat, you do, and that makes you want to steer, you know, away. So yeah, it's interesting.
Watch all the YouTube videos or Top Gear you want. It doesn't really make sense until you're the one that does it. Now, before we drop over the edge of the hill, what gear are we in?
So we're in drive, so we need to put it into S1. Is that right?
Because drive isn't a gear; it's just a direct. It's just that way, right? We don't know if we're in third or fifth or whatever.
So now we're in S1, and are we automatically in hill descent?
Hill descent control is on by default in the background.
Right. Okay.
It's not going to do anything unless you meet its parameters. So currently, if you look at the speedometer needle, it is below that little arrow, the target speed. So hill descent control doesn't have any need to do anything. Cool. As soon as that speedometer needle meets or exceeds that arrow, hill descent control comes in to help you out if you are not on the brake.
Yeah. Cool. And this is different as well, because from the passenger seat you can actually see down this hill, but I can't see anything except the trees. So you're not sure which way the path going, although you can kind of get an indicator there, but you don't know whether it's directly there or it goes down there. Stuff's interesting. So
all the way off the brake for me. And it's smooth and it's subtle and it's quiet, right?
It's
and
incredible.
So we're not freaking out.
Nice.
So, you guys remember the Freelander?
Yeah.
The first Land Rover that didn't have low range. And if it didn't have, we'll go right again. If it didn't have low range, then it didn't have that same measure of engine braking available. Right?
Yeah.
Well, if it didn't have engine braking, how in the world was it going to deserve the Land Rover logo from an off-roadability standpoint in slippery descents? First gear wasn't enough. That first gear, so in your 70, again, was it 74?
74, yeah.
75. We'll take a left, please. In that vehicle, engine braking was the tool of choice because it was really the only choice. Otherwise, you were going to lock the brakes up and create the slide down the hill. And so, that little Freelander was the impetus for the development of hill descent control. It turns out that on that vehicle it worked so well that we brought it into all of the lineup, and then it turns out it worked so well for Land Rover that everybody else has copied us, right?
Yeah.
So Toyota has a version of it, Nissan has a version of it, Jeep and Ford and so on all have a version of it, but it's not necessarily as smooth and quiet and refined as that, right? It might be louder or abrupt or more noticeable in some way.
Yeah, the technology is incredible. Anybody that thinks these are not worthy off-road vehicles because they're expensive and bought by the gentry who only take them on the grass, that is wrong. You know, this is incredible, the technology.
I do my best on a daily basis to disprove that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't want to go through the Rubicon on one or two to scratch up on a Range Rover or something, but it's nice to know that you can, if you get off the beaten track and do trails like this, at least, you know, it's wonderful.
You say that, but I have a photograph of a 4th generation Range Rover that I drove through Moab.
Cool.
It can do it with careful driving and spotting and so on, but
well, I think I have to stretch to buy one of these, but I'm not sure I'd want to scratch it up.
Alright, so that feature, hill descent control, like we pointed out, has a minimum and a maximum operating speed. And so if you were to look around this corner here, I'm going to guess that you'll agree the best speed through that set of obstacles right there is going to be slower than 2.2 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so you will still need to operate the brakes.
Right.
But there's a big advantage to that. If you are on the brake, you can, and I don't mean to say you can control, but you can influence the suspension.
Right.
When you wheel up off the ground. So if at this point you'd be very gentle on that gas pedal, when this wheel comes off of the ground and then comes back down to you, we can reduce the severity of the bounce. We can reduce the amount of suspension compression. And if we can keep the oil pan off of the rock on the ground, then we can drive home and not walk home. So you said you have been off-road, or rally school, you said, yes?
Yeah, I've done a full day at a rally school in Super Imprezas.
Fun.
About 400 horsepower and full roll cage and all that. It's a lot of fun, yeah. It's,
was that here in the UK?
Very different discipline in England.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, other than kind of rolling up grass hills, steep grass hills in a four-wheel drive, I've never really done any proper off-road.
Okay. And so far, being out of the ruts has provided us this relatively smooth, easy path, and you're doing a really nice job of being smooth on the throttle, and so it's smooth. But in about a car length, we're not going to be flat.
Yeah.
We'll be distinctly leaning to the right. Mm-hmm. And given the conditions today, a slide is likely.
Right.
And if we're out of the rut over here, and we engineer this slide, then what's to stop us from going into the trees? Nothing. There is no edge.
Sure.
Now, if we're in the ruts, the low side is like a little wall. I want you to think about it like the bumper on a pool table, right? That's the edge that's going to save us from sliding off into the weeds over here. And it doesn't need to be big, right? It's only a couple 2 inches, but that's enough of an edge to prevent us from inadvertently sliding off the hill. Right. And given that we're an independent suspension vehicle, so there's no straight axle, no differential hanging down low like in the Land Rover, there is a less likelihood that we're going to induce any sort of drag, right? If we're in a straight axle vehicle, maybe out of the ruts is the better choice, depending on the depth of the rut. But given that we have independent suspension, we can use the rut to our advantage more often than if we were in a straight axle vehicle. Right. My suggestion, especially for this next little bit here, is put it right over there in that rut and use that little lip, that little edge as the safety net. Julie, is he always this smooth a driver?
Yeah, he is actually.
Well, that's fantastic. So most people are not. And so in particular, in first gear, in this program, the throttle tends to feel a little jumpy, a little too crisp, a little too much. And so even though you are super smooth, I'm going to ask you to, right about here, pop it into second. So we don't first gear torque to get us up this hill. We have sufficient power in second to get us up this hill. But can you feel the difference in the throttle?
Yeah.
Dramatically more forgiving, right?
And is my speed about right, or a bit too fast, or a bit too slow?
You're perfect. This is great. So first gear, especially when we have very unequally weighted situations like that, tends to want to spin the lightest wheel.
Right.
And if you hit a root or a rock in the trail and your foot inadvertently bumps into that throttle, you've increased the chance of breaking that traction.
Yeah.
But second, makes it less likely that that root or that rock is what's going to cause the loss of traction.
I felt that on a couple of the routes. I was a bit surprised you could actually feel the traction slipping on the route itself, because of course it's giving way, but it's just something you don't think about unless you think about it consciously. Sort of.
Yep. And so to further that point, I'm going to ask you to stop in just a moment. We're not there yet, but when I do, it's immediate, okay?
Okay.
Let's stop there. Okay. So we can tell we're on a lean. Feel that it's maybe not a normal road. Feels a little unnatural, but it's not like it's dramatic.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Nothing
we're still
scary.
calm. We're still comfortable, right? Okay. Richard, can you do me a favor and not go anywhere?
Sure.
Stay exactly where you are. And Julie, would you mind stepping out with me? Yeah. Because your point just a moment ago was you could feel it.
Yeah.
But you had to really pay attention to it. You had to think about what was going on, right? So this feels okay. I mean, obviously not normal, but okay. Doesn't feel dramatic. So Richard, just for your heads up, that wheel is about 1.5 foot off of the ground.
Right.
Like that.
Is it?
And you can see that the suspension is extended quite far.
It's cool. It's fun.
Like that. No clearance at the front of mine. Obviously at the back.
This is great, Ben. We're really learning a lot. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
It's fun and educational.
So there's a lot to be gained from the visual. Okay, ooh, perfect. Hang tight. Don't take a look at the steering wheel.
Yep.
It would suggest that you have the car pointed straight ahead.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, then we would have no trouble just rolling downhill. Gravity would pull us down from this point, right? But if you use your handy graphic, it shows you that you actually have the wheel 360 degrees out. You are one complete turn to the left, because it feels like you should steer that way.
Good point.
And if you were to get out of the car, I'm not going to ask you to, but if you were to get out of the car and look at it, you would actually be driving those two wheels uphill.
Yeah.
Where they meet the ground right now, it's uphill to go left.
Yeah.
And so you're creating undue resistance.
Sure.
We'll probably slide this way, and you'll need the little throttle. Even though we're pointing downhill, you'll need throttle to get the wheel to move, the car to move.
Okay.
So let's try this. Despite the fact that it feels wrong, take the wheel and come one full turn to the right. Not quite there.
Is that enough?
There you go, there's full turn. And just come off the brake. No throttle needed, right?
Yeah.
Because gravity did the bulk of the work right there.
Cool.
And it was a lot easier to make it through that. But if you had been turned to the left, you would have almost certainly needed to force it through that situation.
Right. Yeah, that's great having the graphic. It's telling you everything you need to know in terms of what's happening with the axles and the wheel angle and the suspension. That's very, very cool.
And then I'm sure you've noticed the heads-up display in front of you.
Yes.
So that also gives you the wheel turn information.
Right, okay. Cool, yeah.
When you get behind the wheel, you'll see it. But currently we can't see this graphic right here. But it's actually, this is the newest generation of it. It gives you the clearest picture.
I've got a heads-up display, but it's not, you know, like this. It's colour and really large, and it's very, very
crisp,
cool.
And gives you steering wheel information. It gives you gear information. It gives you a compass direction. We'll just continue up
this may be the most expensive lesson we've ever done. I want a Range Rover after this. This is for sure. Just have to find the right fields to cross on the way to work.
Especially with these less than perfect conditions where they're going to induce these sort of slides.
Yeah, we'd be stuffed in my Volvo here because it wouldn't manage the depth of some of these ruts, so then you'd avoid it, and then you'd get into problems like you mentioned where you perhaps got some loose mud at the side and you'd be sliding off. Plus you don't, you know, you might feel that your steering wheel is straight when you've really got an angle because subconsciously you're putting it away, and this is really helping when you know, as a a great instant visual check to check where you are. So,
and
technology is brilliant.
I don't know if you guys have caught on yet, but I might actually sort of encourage you to make that mistake.
Yeah,
by distracting you on purpose to get that to come up, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to continue on this path. But you're doing a really good job paying attention. So let's talk about the differentials, right? Currently, we have an unlocked or open.
And straight down.
Please.
Yeah.
And currently, we have a 2/3 locked center differential. Well, the wording of it doesn't make any sense to me. How can anything be 2/3 locked? Right?
Yeah.
But the convention is for a differential to either be locked or unlocked. Up until actually Land Rover's development of this. Go for it. And so now notice we're showing 2/3 locked on the rear. So in a conventional system, I'm going to come up and finish my explanation or else I'll get tracked.
Sure.
So you would either have perhaps an air locker where there's a button you push and you lock it, or an electronic locker where there's a button and you push it, and mechanically, physically, those two axle shafts will be locked together.
Right.
And as long as we're on a straight line on flat ground, that's just fine.
Yeah.
But the moment that we make a turn, like we just talked about, or we have a wheel up and off the ground, we will have a need for a different wheel speed.
Mm-hmm.
And so locking them together is counterproductive.
Yep.
So having it be able to partially lock is going to mean that we can still distribute power, but not all or none, just some and some more.
Right.
Which really makes more sense because typically we have some and some more grip.
Is that on a linear scale or is it just like a 70-30 split for argument's sake or something?
So the 1/3, 2/3, 3/3 graphic is simply for a visual effect. It doesn't do it in 1/3 increments.
I see.
Okay. And so
so that's not currently a 70-30 split.
Correct.
Right.
It doesn't tell us specifically what it is, but it's somewhere approximating that.
Okay. But it can, in theory, do it in a kind of infinite linear scale. If you realise it needed 68% there and 72% or 32% there or whatever.
It can do that.
It can do that.
Up to 100% lock.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Here's the thing. A, most people don't have any understanding of what this does. B, even if they do, they don't know when to do it, and maybe more importantly, when to undo it.
This is an awesome machine.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's so luxurious and comfortable as well. I mean, on a highway, we can get a slight gradient uphill.
So first is perhaps too much torque.
Okay, so let's.
It's over there now because the wheel's upside down.
It's awesome. Okay.
And we can have this information back if you'd like that one, but we'll come to this because it's one of my favorites, but we're not quite there yet. Oh, hold on. I know I'm talking a lot, but you guys seem to be sitting. Currently, we're in a unequally weighted and poor grip situation.
Yeah.
And so the vehicle senses all of this and tries to maximize the power distribution advantage. But remember I said that the back wheels take a tighter turn than the fronts?
Right.
And so if that is the case, then we need the differentials to unlock.
Okay.
So try this without changing anything with the pedals, right? So you got a foot on the brake, no gas. Watch this and steer. So let's go maybe a full turn left. It unlocked them both.
Wow, yeah.
Because it senses the need for a different wheel speed.
Yeah.
You told it the wheels are going to go this way. It's going to need a different wheel speed.
And it looks,
But now it's locking back at right. So
cool is that?
You don't even have to understand it.
Yeah.
And it does it not just for you, but incrementally for you.
Yeah, that is awesome.
It's pretty great. Okay, we can keep going. All right, here we are. Feel like we're about to tip it over. We're all of 22 degrees. Theoretically.
And it's impressive because you think kind of 45 degrees, really, you'd say, wouldn't you? And it's like 22, which isn't that bad, really. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
Handy little visual.
This little graphic here, does that shrink and increase based on the angle as well as given the numerical reference?
Does
this?
Oh yeah, this is real time. Watch, it'll do it.
So now it's increasing because the angle's decreasing. Cool. All right, so we'll come around this turn. If you wouldn't mind taking this cut, that's cool. I'm sure that was fun. That's cool. I had a Ferrari 458. You had the Lamborghini Gallardo, wasn't it? I think. Yeah.
So we're real car fans, huh?
Yeah, he's a motorcycle fan, but I'm more of a car fan.
Okay. Lifelong?
Yeah.
All right.
Ooh.
What are we feeling?
I think I'm just proud of the rut on the left. I maybe should have taken a slightly wider arc there.
Okay.
I turned the wheel a lot, but it wasn't enough, I don't think. So it feels like I'm just on the right-hand edge of the rut, and so it's got to kind of slide down before I can straighten the wheel a bit. But you'll know.
Okay.
This is what it feels like to me. But
So, in fact, I think you are in the rut and steering against the edge of it.
right,
Not out of it, trying to...
So I feel like I'm on the right-hand side of the rut, but you think I'm on the left-hand side, kind of almost going up it.
Let's check.
Yeah.
Let's put it in park and take a quick step outside.
That's a good idea. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Park brake will engage automatically. So again, seeing it
Yeah.
firsthand is really
everything.
valuable, even though we have a pretty good concept with that.
Well, I'd be disappointed if you weren't absolutely right. That's cool.
If you come up to here, you can really see it. So we're in the rut,
Yeah.
and the attempt
Yeah.
is to steer to the left, which is driving right up
Yeah.
2 vertical walls. Hard as you want,
Yeah.
you're not going to achieve what... It's not going to go that way, right?
No.
Because this hill is slick.
Of course, normally you could put the camera on if you weren't sure, and
Yep.
you'd be able to see.
You would.
Right. Okay.
You would, okay? But this is
Yeah, but it's
even
perfect.
better than getting out, so you can see that it's just not going to achieve what we're asking it to do by steering left.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're never going to get out of the rut. The more to the left you steer, the worse you're making it.
Yep.
Not steer.
So that tire just lit up red. Is that just showing it's losing traction?
So
it lost traction.
It was very light.
Yes.
That suspension element was showing you that it couldn't go any lower. So it may have been off of the ground, but at least it didn't have very good grip because it was so light. And so it was very easy for that wheel to spin. And notice that this vehicle is equipped with a locking rear and a locking center diff, but no locking front.
Right.
And so the locking rear diff, showing partial lock right now, is equalizing to some degree the power distribution, and so lessening the likelihood that one tire is going to spin a whole lot faster than the other. But that doesn't exist on the front axle because that really negatively affects steering. And so we're reliant upon traction control to control the power distribution on the front. And there's a little gravelly patch right there, and that'd be a great place to change up drivers.
All right. It's all yours, madam.